Chapter 1. The 4th of November, 1979. U.S. Embassy, Tehran, Iran. The worst day of Howard Chandler's life started out pleasantly enough. The young Foreign Service Officer, or FSO, got into the office early and read yesterday's Washington Post. He then took his coffee over to Eddie Kane's office. Kane was a Miami Dolphins fan, and Chandler needed to make sure he understood how badly his Oilers were going to beat them this coming Monday. "Knock, knock," said Chandler as he peeked into Kane's office. "Hey, Howard, come on in," replied Kane. "You looking forward to reading all about the Dolphins' inevitable implosion?" "No way, pal. Our defense is stacked. It's the second coming of the no-name defense." "Whatever," replied Chandler. "I'll see your immovable object and raise you the irresistible force that is the Oilers' run game." There were few things in life that Howard Chandler believed in as much as he believed in running back Earl Campbell. The two had crossed paths at the University of Texas, where Chandler was getting his master's degree in international relations, and Campbell was playing halfback for the Longhorns. "How are you settling in? Tehran can be a bit of a culture shock as an initial assignment," said Kane. "It's not bad," replied Chandler. "It's a lot cooler here than I expected." "Don't get used to it," laughed Kane. "You'll have plenty to complain about when it's 101 out come July." "On the upside," said Chandler, "it can't be as swampy as a Houston summer." "Amen to that. And there's no chance of a hurricane." Chandler looked over to the bookcase next to Kane's desk and saw a framed photo of the man with his wife and son, who looked about 3. "I've been meaning to ask you," said Chandler, "how do you and Irene make it work? I mean, I always assumed that if I started a family, I'd bring them with me." "For most postings, Irene and Danny would be right here with me. But with things as crazy as they are with this Islamic revolution, we're just playing it safe. I'm not going to lie to you, though. It's been a rough go. She's with her parents in Virginia, and Danny loves spending so much time with his grandparents, but it's lonely. You never notice how much you depend on someone until they're no longer around." "Man, that sounds pretty rough," agreed Chandler. "I guess I don't have anything to worry about for a while. I don't even have a girl back home. I'm a total free agent." "I've seen this movie before," said Kane. "You're about 2 months from meeting the woman of your dreams out there." He gestured towards the city outside his window. "This town is full of smart and beautiful women." "Hey, pal, you're a married man," joked Chandler. "Yeah, I'm married, but I'm not blind," replied Kane. "Anyhow, what does Henderson have you doing today?" "Just monkey work," said Chandler. "Mostly entering visa applications into the new computer system." "Ah, yes. Just what you were hoping for when you signed up, I'm sure." Someone's got to do it," said Chandler. "Might as well be me. And hey, at least I can't really screw it up." "That's a good attitude. Keep it up." Chandler left the office and headed off to his post at the computer. The embassy had recently installed a new computer system, which would streamline the application process and help the State Department flag suspicious or rejected applications. There was a considerable backlog, so he really needed to get a start on the day. On his way up to the computer room on the 2nd floor of the Chancery building, he looked out a window and could see protesters milling about along the fence line. On his way upstairs, he ran into Paul Myers, the station's regional security officer, or RSO. "Hey, Paul. Looks like the protests are starting out early today," said Chandler. "Yeah," replied Myers. "The Ayatollah has declared today National Students' Day to commemorate some kids that were killed by the Shah's secret police last year." "Are we doing anything special about it?" asked Chandler. "There was some talk about closing the embassy, but Mr. Langan decided against it." Bruce Langen was the charge d'affaires, the officer in charge of the embassy in the absence of an ambassador. Don't sweat it, but stay alert. You never know when things can get sticky around here. They don't call it a hardship posting for nothing, said Chandler with a grin. It was unsettling to have so many people so angry at you. It didn't help that they were just outside the walls of the compound. Chandler wasn't too concerned, though. The embassy had been captured just 9 months earlier, on Valentine's Day. It had taken about 3 hours for the regional government to get control over the crowds. It was a frightening event. But in the end, there was only one man taken hostage, and the affair was more or less over within a week's time. Chandler spent the next few hours peacefully entering data into the computer. Around 10 o'clock, he decided it was time for a break. He headed down to the break room on the first floor to grab some coffee. As he stood there watching the cream swirl in the blackness, he heard a shout. "Hey, they're coming over the walls!" Chandler looked out the window, but he couldn't see anything from here. To get a better look, he crossed to the other side of the building, the south-facing side, where the main entrance was, and looked out the office window. "Holy shit," he said. There were at least half a dozen men wearing face coverings in various stages of climbing the wrought iron barriers that surrounded the embassy grounds. He walked down the hallway to the main entrance. There he again ran into Paul Myers, who raised his radio. "This is a recall," said Myers. "I need all Marines to the primary post." "Paul," said Chandler, "what do I do?" "Get up to the second floor and wait for instructions." Both men started up the stairs. "Is there anything I can help you with?" asked Chandler. "How's your Farsi?" asked Myers. "Passable. I spent my junior year at Ferdowsi University in Mashhad as part of the Georgetown Exchange in '75. "All right. Stick with me and translate," said Myers. "But try to stay out of the way. The Marines and I will handle any action." After a second, he added, "Oh, and stay away from the windows." The two men headed to the communication vault, where they were met by several of Myers' Marines. "Listen up, Marines. We've been through this before. We're going to get through to the authorities, and we'll get them to settle these students down. Remember the rules of engagement. We can't shoot anybody, but they don't know that. So we're going to arm up to convince them that we mean business. And no tear gas on campus. But if anyone gets in the building, we'll gas them." Myers was interrupted by a shout. "They're coming in through the basement windows!" Without hesitating, Myers said, "Quinn, round everyone up and get them to the vault. Roberts and Murphy, get down to the basement and put a lid on this thing." With his orders given, Myers picked up the phone and started dialing. His first call was to Bruce Langen. Langen was over at the Iranian Foreign Ministry and not on the embassy grounds. Chandler listened as Myers filled him in on the situation and could hear Langen reiterating that there would be no shooting of the protesters. Myers hung up the phone and made a second call. From the sound of it, this call was to local law enforcement. Myers was trying to explain the urgency of the situation, but it sounded to Chandler like he wasn't getting anywhere. After a few minutes, Myers slammed the receiver down. "Damn it, this is bullshit," said Myers. "Let's get to the basement before this gets any more out of hand." They quickly descended the stairs 2 at a time, getting to the basement within a minute. Once there, Chandler could sense that the scene was about to turn south. There were several Marines holding shotguns and shouting at the intruders. One of the Marines racked his shotgun, and there was a gasp among the students. "Hold it!" said Myers. "Let's get everyone calmed down a notch." He scanned the crowd, trying to find someone who looked like they were running things. "Chandler, find out who's in charge here." "Who is responsible here?" asked Chandler in Farsi. "I am," replied a young, bearded man, also in Farsi. "We do not want to harm you. We simply want to make a declaration." Chandler turned to Myers. "He says they just want to make a statement and that they don't want to hurt us." "I see," replied Myers. Tell him that they can't do that here. We need them to clear out of here. We are prepared to defend this area. Everyone needs to go back out through the windows." Chandler translated. The men looked at the Marine guards and the shotguns they held. With an air of resignation, they departed through the windows they had originally broken and climbed through. Myers' radio crackled to life. "Boss, we've got more trouble," said one of the Marines. "What is it?" asked the RSO. "They're on the roof. You'd better get up here." "Look," said Myers, "we need to fall back to the second floor. We're going to cede the low ground to these creeps." "Roger that, sir," replied one of the sergeants. Both Marines followed Myers and Chandler up the 2 flights of stairs to the second floor. Once they made it there, they could hear the students stomping on the roof. A Marine guard approached Myers. "I just chucked a canister of CS gas in each of the heads and secured the doors with rope, but they're going to get in for sure if we don't get some relief soon." The sounds of windows breaking filled the corridor. "Okay," said Myers. "Let's fall back to the vault." "Paul," said Liz Swift, the chief of the political section and the senior official on site, "we need to destroy these guns." She pointed at the shotguns the 2 Marines from the basement were carrying. Myers hesitated. "If we're going to be overrun, the guns are going to cause more harm than good. Mr. Langan was clear that there was to be no shooting." "You heard the lady," replied Myers. "Break 'em down." The Marines hurriedly broke down the shotguns and set the component parts aside. "I need everyone in the vault, and keep the shredders and incinerator going. We need to clear as much of this material as we can." As the staff kept up the document destruction, Chandler heard the unmistakable sounds of the crowd bursting into the lower floor of the building. "I'm going to go calm them down," said Myers. "Mike, I could really use your help," he continued, looking at Michael Matrinko, one of the best Farsi speakers on the staff. "No offense, kid," he told Chandler, "but I want the big guns for this." The 2 men left and closed the door behind them. Howard Chandler had never been so afraid in his life. Eddie Kane came over to Chandler. "You know," said Kane, "we get paid the same rate during times of international crisis." Chandler recognized the use of humor under stress. It was a tactic he often used. "The real crisis for you," replied Chandler, "is going to be when Earl Campbell runs for $1.50 on your fish tomorrow." "Keep thinking that, buddy," said Kane. "Campbell's good, but that defensive line is going to bottle him up and sell him." Before they could continue, they heard shouting from the other side of the door. "That doesn't sound like it's going well," said one of the Marines. Then there was the sound of a single gunshot, followed by silence. After what seemed like an eternity, there was a pounding on the door. From the other side of the door came the call. "It's me, Mike," said Matrinko. "They've killed Paul. They're going to kill me next, and they're threatening to burn down the building. I guess they know our playbook too well." All eyes in the vault shifted to Chief Swift. "Open the door," she said without flinching. The Marine nearest the door unlatched the lock and turned the handle. The door flew open as the Iranians on the other side pushed it in. One of the Iranians yelled at them in Farsi. Matrinko translated for him. "He says for everyone to get on your knees." The man pointed at the Marine nearest him and said something to Matrinko. "Okay, if he points at one of you, you need to come out into the hall." The Marine went first, followed by another. The man was working his way through from the front of the vault to the back. Chandler lost count of how many had been brought out before it was his turn. When pointed at, he dutifully went out into the hall. He was surrounded by armed and angry men. They pointed their guns at him and shoved him to his knees. Once he was on the ground, they bound his hands behind his back with a strip of fabric, then took a second piece of fabric and wrapped it around his eyes, blinding him. Now, helpless, he was kicked in the back and fell over on his side. There was shouting and laughter. Someone yanked him to his feet and roughly dragged him down the hall. He was disoriented from the ordeal, but he was fairly sure that they took him to the room in the southeast corner of the building. He couldn't remember whose office this was. His handler shoved him into a chair and bound him to it. He then heard the chilling sound of a semi-automatic pistol being charged. He felt the barrel against his head. "Mark Bar America," shouted a voice. Chandler's heart stopped as he waited for death. Click. The laughter of several men told Chandler that he wasn't going to die just yet.